On dirt racing news in Brantford, Ontario here, World of Outlaws STP Sprint Car Series set to go at the Ohsweken Speedway tomorrow night. Today, joined now by the 20-time champion, the king of the Outlaws, Steve Kinser. Steve, when you look back at the career that you've had with the Outlaws, this obviously being your last year, the kind of a farewell tour that they've put together for you, take us back to the very beginning and how you got into sprint car racing.
Well, my father raced, and I grew up watching him race, and always wanted to race. You know, just hoping I could race on the weekends and have a job to the work and run local racetracks. But we got started with a second car that guy owned that Dad had, and after that it turned into, got hooked up with Ohsweken Kinser, and we started World of Outlaws in '78, and racing's been good to me after that.
Now you're coming through this last year, as we said, kind of your last chance to go to a lot of these tracks that the tour only goes to once a year. Have you kind of had a chance to stop and think about that this is going to be your last trip to some of these tracks, especially in Canada?
Well, yeah, you have. You know, it's nice to. I was just going to run a limited schedule this year, and Tony Stewart and Dana, my wife, decided that they thought I might ought to do one full year and let everybody know. And so I don't know where we're at. I'm going to weigh it out at the end of the year and see if I'm going to run a partial schedule or just quit. You know, it's getting awful expensive, and I run up and down the road for almost 40 years now. So not that I still don't enjoy doing it, and I know I'm going to miss it, but when you get 60 years old, sometimes it's hard to keep the weight off, and eyesight's not as good as it was, and sometimes you just don't have quite the ambition you had in your 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Now that you come back here to Canada, your last time, and Tony Stewart Racing as your car owner, you raced for a couple of other car owners, for yourself a couple of times. What has it meant for you to have Tony Stewart Racing here over these last few years?
Well, Tony basically helped me to continue to run my race team. He lets me run it as my race team. I mean, we run our own motors, same stuff that I always ran. So he's allowed me to run another 3 or 4 years, basically, where it was going to be tough. I mean, I could have done it out of my pocket and stuff, but Tony's got some good people behind him, and if you got to have a boss, it's nice to have a boss that knows about racing, and that's pretty good to you too.
I'm sure there's a ton of people that kind of have helped you get through your career. Like you said, it's been 40 years up and down the road with the Outlaws. Is there 1 or 2 people that have really made this so successful for you?
Well, you know, there is a couple people that got me started with Jerry Shields and Bob Thompson, and you know, gave me the first opportunities to get in a race car, and then after that I was lucky enough to get in one of the best cars there was in the United States with Ohsweken Kinser, and ran for him up until mid-90s, and then ran my own race team up until Tony. So I've only been with 3 different drivers other than those 2 guys that helped me start.
Now, when you look at some of these tracks that you've been to over the years, you've been to probably more tracks than I could ever name. Is there one track that you've kind of pinpointed as your favorite track that you raced at all these years?
Well, I always think Eldor, not just because Tony owns it, but even back when Earl owned it and stuff, it was a track I enjoyed going to and racing a lot, and still do. It's a fun racetrack to race on, and over the years, I'd have to say if one stood out, that would have to be it. But they're all good. You know, that's this thing about dirt track racing. You never know Mother Nature is going to give you and what the track preparation is going to get. And some of the tracks you don't enjoy, you'll come and have some of the greatest races you ever had. Don't think you're going to do it. So that's the thing about dirt track racing. It's always changing, and tracks are different. And then we run everything from quarter-mile tracks up to miles. We haven't run any miles for a few years, but there's nothing like the open wheel cars in the dirt track races.
20 Outlaw championships over however many years that we've been here now, and over 500 wins with the Outlaws. Is there one win or one championship that has stood out to you in your memory as the biggest or most important one?
Oh, I don't know if there's any more important than others. I think my thing that stands out most is we have ran good for 35 plus years, and with 3 different race teams, and that's something that's probably my biggest accomplishment. We've pretty well stayed on the top of the sport. We've slipped off a little bit right now, but and a lot of it is hard for us to keep up with our motor program and things like that. But that's probably it. We've just been running good for a lot of years.
Now, you said that there's a possibility you run a part-time tour next year, or that you pretty much just give it up completely. Obviously, you're still going to be involved in racing. Have you figured out kind of in what capacity that might be?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to sit down and talk to Tony Stewart Racing and Tony here at the end of the year, and you know, see if he's interested in running some kind of partial schedule with me, and if not, I could do it on myself. But you know, I don't know. I'm going to. I don't know. I might. I always said if I wasn't going to run them all, I'd probably quit and maybe just try to help Craig out a little bit and try to look toward him and get him going a little bit, because he's quite a bit younger than I am.
Last question for you. I know you got the Knoxville Nationals coming up here in, I believe, 9 days' time. As we look forward to that and potentially your final Knoxville Nationals, going into that race, it's obviously the biggest race there is in the sprint car racing world. What's your mindset going into that race for possibly the last time?
Well, it's not real good. You know, we've been struggling a little bit, and we haven't been home for a while to get to them. But you know, I got cars sitting at the shop, the new car pretty well ready to go. So you know, our motor program, we'll try to get home and get something freshened up, what we think's the best, and go out there and see what we can do.
All right, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us here at On Dirt Racing News today, Steve. Best of luck to you tomorrow night at Ohsweken Speedway and throughout the rest of the year on your final trip around North America with the Outlaws.
Well, I always enjoy coming to Ohsweken and racing. It's a place I enjoy, and it's not that far away out of here, so you never know when you might see me back up here.
All right, Steve Kinser set to do battle with the World of Outlaws STP Sprint Car Series tomorrow night at the Ohsweken Speedway. For On Dirt Racing News, I'm Clayton Johns.